Welcome to the training on recruiting volunteers. Now, this is a short introduction. The meat of that training is in the audio session listed on this webpage. But in this introduction, a few things I want to highlight. First of all, and I already shared this in an earlier session, I personally do not believe in just sticking warm bodies in a place to fill a spot. You don't fill spots. You find people that have the right heart, that come alongside the right purpose, that are there for the right reason. You invest in them, you train them, you equip them, and then you let them run with God's truth, connecting, loving these kids, and sharing Christ with them. Now, the problem is, and what I'm asked often is, what if I don't have that many people with that kind of heart in my church? And realistically, sometimes you may run short. And this is my preference, and I've had to do it before. I had rather rewrite my schedule than to simply fill spots with warm bodies. Because what I've discovered is when people are there for the wrong reason, when they're there because they've been guilted into being there or manipulated, or they're there and it's a burden to them, it's never going to bring what you want in your vacation Bible school. And so listen to the session on recruiting volunteers. Now, this session was originally made for recruiting volunteers in children's ministry. So as you think about it, just realize what you're recruiting them to is a whole lot simpler, because you're not asking for a year commitment. You are asking for a few days of commitment. You're asking for them to commit to some training, to prepare, and then to be there at the event, to love the kids, to relate to the kids, and to share Christ with them. And so what you're recruiting them for is a lot easier, but the same basics come into play. Now, one of the things that I want you to realize is when you recruit volunteers, you need to do a background check on your volunteers. You're going to see in the session on safety and security, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but a lot of churches, they do background checks for those working in Sunday school, but they don't do it for those helping in Vacation Bible School. And you need to have background checks on every one of your volunteers that's age 18 and above. That's a safeguard for your church, and it's a safeguard especially for your kids. Now, I also don't want you to completely rely on that background check to say, oh, we're safe. You still need to have the wisdom and the rules that you would in any children's ministry, which is you don't want anybody alone with any child anywhere at any time. Not alone in a classroom with the kids, not alone in the hall. Alone in the hall is okay, and not alone in a room, especially not with a shut door, because you're going to have conversations. If you're intentionally evangelistic and you have people answering kids' questions, they need to sit publicly where everybody can see them. And so background checks, you need to be wise beyond just a background check, because statistically, somebody is not caught doing wrongful acts with kids until they've done it about a couple of hundred times. And that background check is not going to catch them unless they've been caught. And so in other words, you have hundreds of incidents that are happening if all you're relying on is the background check. And so you need to have safeguards in place with your volunteers. This is not mistrust. Saddleback, a thing when I went out to visit one of their conferences that I loved what they said. They said, in God we trust, everybody else we screen. And that is a great, great idea. It's not a lack of trust in volunteers. It's not a lack of trust in God. It's the wisdom to say, we want people in leadership, and we've done due justice to have a background check to make sure that every one of our leaders, as far as we know, is safe and secure to be working with children. And so recruiting volunteers, a few things I wanted to highlight before you jump into the meat of how you're going to enlist and volunteer and put people to work whose hearts are right alongside yours in reaching people for Christ.